Welcome back, 412-575-2600 on the Borders and Borders hotline. Also taking your tweets at Josh Taylor HD. We have Sean on Twitter who says Baltimore is going to be rush heavy on defense. If Ben can continue to release the ball quick, find the open receiver, chew up yards and clock, Jackson can't hurt them on the sideline. And Chris, if you want to take from what we've seen in the past, it's kind of borrowing from what they did last week against Tennessee. I thought the first half against Tennessee is exactly what you needed to do against Derrick Henry. The second half was exactly what you probably didn't want to do, but if they can do the same thing in the first half against Baltimore and keep it going in the second half, I kind of like that game plan.
I thought Ben Roethlisberger was clinical against Tennessee, especially in the first quarter. It was him at his best. Still making great throws. The first touchdown pass is an absolutely threaded needle by Ben Roethlisberger. It just felt to me in the second half of that game, and it maybe started with the interception late in the first half, where he absolutely didn't need to throw that ball. He took possible points off the board, didn't even give the Steelers a chance at a field goal. It just felt like he reverted a little bit back into gunslinger mode. When Ben Roethlisberger's play style, the selections he makes as far as what throws he's going to attempt, start to resemble Brett Favre, that's when I start to get a little antsy, because he does have the arm to complete them, but those are high-risk, high-reward plays, and I've said this all week, and I'll continue to say it, and I'll probably say it all season. Ben Roethlisberger has to realize that just by virtue of his presence back on the field, if this team continues to win big, he will get a heap, like a ton of the credit, as long as they just keep winning. He doesn't have to put up monster MVP numbers. This town will love him for it simply by virtue of the fact that he isn't Devlin Hodges and he isn't Mason Rudolph. He does not need to try to play like an MVP. First half, Ben, in that Tennessee game, that is a winning formula.
I've said this a lot over the past couple years. I was hoping the last couple years of Ben Roethlisberger's career would be very similar to his idol, John Elway, where he didn't have to do a lot of it by himself. He was just surrounded with a lot of great talent and a couple possible Hall of Famers on that team, and all he had to do was just insert tab A into slot A and get out of the way. That's what I was expecting. And we saw that in the first half. And then we saw him, like you mentioned, revert to the old Ben in the second half. I want to see more of the first half Ben, and hopefully that keeps going throughout the course of the season. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to Alex in Mount Lebanon. Alex, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Hi, how are you guys doing tonight?
Good. How are you, Alex?
I'm doing good. How do you think the Steelers defense will do on Lamar Jackson?
I have no idea, especially considering the fact that Ulysses Gilbert looks like he's not going to play in this game. That changes a lot for me because you don't have Devin Bush, you don't have the backup to the backup. So you do pretty much Robert Spillane, Vince Williams, and you're pretty much trying to figure out who comes next after that. You might have to see some of the guys come out of the defensive backfield trying to share some snaps at that linebacker position if things go wrong. And that's the thing I'm probably looking at because Lamar Jackson commands so much attention in the middle of the field. But Chris, what are you seeing as far as his defense?
Well, I think you saw him go over 100 yards first off for the first time last game, so that's one thing to consider. He finally cracked 100, but he's only gone over 80 twice in the first 6 games of the season. He's still their most effective running back, I think, or the most dangerous guy they have in the open field. I have my concerns, though, too, as far as their ability to hold him down and kind of hem him in. I don't think he's going to crack 100, but I do think he's going to be able to make some plays with his arm over the middle of the field. Mark Andrews in the middle of the field is a guy they really like for obvious reasons at tight end. What kind of strikes me as, I guess, something to be a bit apprehensive about if you're a Steelers fan and to be worried about is Robert Spillane and Vince Williams both like to get downhill and hit like Mack trucks. That is the kind of thing that good, experienced teams like Baltimore, specifically Baltimore, with how they play offense, love to attack.
Right.
Oh, you think we're going to run it at you because we've run it 4 or 5 times in a row with some success, and now you're really trying to get downhill? Yeah, this is the one where we pull it back and hit Andrews for 25 yards down the seam. I think there's going to be 2 things that are important in this game defensively as far as stopping Jackson. Minkah Fitzpatrick has to have a big game defending passes in the middle of the field, and the Steelers have to make maybe a little bit of a gambit and put a guy like Cam Sutton closer to the line of scrimmage and in on more plays and let him try to rove around a little bit because I think he's a pretty sure tackler, and I think you need somebody flat out more athletic. You have to sacrifice a little bit of size here to try to contain a guy like Jackson.
You mentioned Mark Andrews. I talked about the 4 Steelers receivers averaging 8.5 yards a catch before. Mark Andrews is one of 4 Ravens that's averaging at least 14 yards a catch. So they've been able to make some big plays down the field. And if you're right, if they're able to use play action, that makes it a lot more possible. Let's go to Billy in Crafton. Billy, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Hey, guys, this is the most boring show I've ever heard in my life. You guys are horrible.
Awesome. You called, too, so you made it better, so appreciate you calling in. How you feeling, Chris?
I could care less. I mean, seriously, it was wonderful.
For the record,
calls
that
like
got hung on the line for the entire segment and a half. So, thanks for adding to the boarding.
That's the biggest. That's like the biggest cell phone there is, in my opinion. Oh yeah. No, he probably was mad because I'm picking the Ravens to win 30-23. By the way, he probably heard the show earlier today. Well, listen, I have a bad feeling that this is one of those games where even though, as like a Steelers fan, you might be thinking it's a house money game. They're going to come out of it having lost, and I get the sense that people will be disappointed. Like, even though you're going into it saying, hey, they're dogs, they were down as a 6-point dog when this thing hit the line right after last week ended, I think people are going to find cause to be a little bit disappointed one way or another with the fact that I don't think they're going to get a win this week.
If I'm weighing this game against the previous six games, I looked at everything and said, okay, they're going to win for these reasons, but there may be one or two things that could go wrong. I look at this one and I say there's one or two reasons why they could win this game, and there's one or two reasons why they can lose this game. If there's one that makes me feel uneasy, it's definitely this one. Chris, I got a question for you, a little philosophical question, if you will. Who's more boring, the guys on the boring show or the guy who watches the entire boring show? Just think about that while we talk to Rudy and Castle Shannon. Rudy, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Hey, how you doing? Hey, the only way the Steelers are able to win this game is if Micah Fitzpatrick steps up. He's the only guy who can run sideline to sideline with Lamar.
You sound like Chris.
Well,
Chris said something to that
effect. They're not going to ask
too.
him to do that, though.
They're not.
I don't
That's
think
true.
they're going to ask him to do that. Like, to me, he makes the biggest impact in this game. If there are still questions in this town, and maybe there are, because I think people want this to be true, just because they don't want Lamar Jackson to have kind of fully formed as a quarterback, because then he becomes almost unstoppable. And there are numbers that bear this out this year, that he hasn't been nearly as good throwing the ball. Micah Fitzpatrick's not going to be the guy they're asking to spy on him. His main utility at stopping a guy like Lamar Jackson is discouraging Lamar Jackson from throwing the ball to the area of the field that I think he wants to work the most through the air, and that's over the middle. Micah Fitzpatrick's got to be sitting on routes. He's got to be manipulating quarterbacks with that little half step here or there. Frankly, Josh, he's got to emulate the guy that used to play free safety in Baltimore and was better than anybody else at doing exactly what I'm describing.
Yes.
Ed Reed kept guys like Brady and Belichick and Peyton Manning up at night. You need a slice of that from Micah Fitzpatrick, I think, to really neutralize Lamar Jackson.
This is a guy that quarterbacks would try to look away with their eyes, and they'd throw to the other side, he'd still get there. It was incredible just how well he was able to play that position. Tweet of the night time. We're going to take a look at that right now. Brought to you by Tri-State Office Furniture. And the tweet comes from the man himself, Bob Pompiani at KD Pomp. He says, it appears MLB is in for a cold winter of salary setbacks. Today, Charlie Morton and Brad Hand, two of the best pitchers in the game, did not have their options picked up by their clubs. Chris, I got to ask you this question. We saw a couple years recently where there wasn't a lot of activity in free agency until maybe we got close to spring training. I'm expecting another offseason like that, but I'm curious how you feel about what you're expecting here in MLB.
Well, I think if the MLB's owners could reinstitute the reserve clause in some way, they would try to do it. And I think everything that they've been doing the last couple of years has been some sort of soft effort to do exactly that. Just remember, the Miami Marlins are worth, what, $2 billion? The Royals sold for over $1 billion. These guys make money hand over fist selling these teams. The value accrues year after year. Don't cry poor to me because it's lying garbage. Thank you.
Chris, you and I are going to pass the hat during the break, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more. See you in a few.